the pain like.
Hey guys, Dae-Yoongi here, and welcome back to my channel. We have another debate topic to look into today, and here is the question in concern. Should K-pop idols be allowed to associate with their ex-group members, so members who have now left the group that they themselves are still a part of? And I just want to clarify that in this discussion, we particularly mean idols who are left with no choice but to leave their respective group amidst controversy, not members who just left for personal or health reasons, because that of course would be a bit of a different discussion. As usual with these debates, I'll start by explaining why we're looking at this topic before we jump into the for and against arguments. Once you have heard both sides of the story, I'll share my personal opinion and open up for discussion to hear yours. Okay, so let's start by first addressing why we're looking at this topic. I recently came across an article that really got me thinking about this, titled K-Netizens Debate on the Appropriateness of Bobby Expressing Support for His Ex-Group Member B.I. At a recent fan sign, iKON member Bobby was chatting with a fan who told him that she was a fan of ex-iKON member B.I. After hearing this, Bobby apparently said, "Please take good care of Hanbin," which is B.I.'s real name. B.I. played a very substantial role in the group iKON, which he left almost 5 years ago now, back in 2019, due to drug allegations, which we all know the K-pop industry takes very seriously. I won't go too much into detail about the reasons any idols mentioned in this video left their groups, because this video is more about their relationships with the ex-group members. And it's no secret that B.I. was definitely close friends with fellow group member Bobby during his time as an iKON member, as they collaborated a lot in the creative process of iKON's music. However, fans now have mixed reactions regarding what seems to be their choice to carry on communicating or showing support for one another, because it's almost as though fans and even the industry expect idols to completely wash their hands of each other following controversy where one of them leaves the group. So with this idea in mind, let's start looking at both sides of this story by looking at the yes arguments, aka reasons why some people might think K-pop idols should still be able to communicate or associate with their ex-group members. The first reason could be as simple as they are likely to still be friends. I know we just started by looking at Bobby and B.I, but iKON as a whole could be a great example of this, because not only has Bobby expressed support for ex-group member B.I in the past, but fellow iKON members DK and J have also been known to wish B.I a happy birthday, or commented on some of his posts on social media. This kind of reminds me of when you have a close colleague at work who you really got along with, but they decide to leave or get a new job. That doesn't necessarily mean you stop being friends with them, especially if you had such a close bond. I think this could really apply even more so in the sort of working environment K-pop idols are used to, because they go through such difficulties together with regards to training, hardships, and even often living together. To suddenly cut somebody out of your life who you have gone through so much with would be really difficult for anybody to do, let alone people who have spent years sharing these experiences together. Another reason why some fans might see no issue with idols communicating with or supporting ex-group members is because we may never really know the full story with regards to why the idol felt the need to leave their group in the first place. Unfortunately, there have been many occasions where idols have felt like they had no choice but to leave their group amidst controversy for the sake of the rest of the group, to ensure that their fellow members do not suffer at the expense of any investigations that may occur. And there have been multiple occasions where the situation seemed to have potentially been misunderstandings or scenarios where, had the company supported them better in clearing their name, then they wouldn't have had to leave the group at all. Therefore, in circumstances like these, where the controversy might not be anywhere near as bad as we initially were led to think, it might be completely normal for the ex-group members' previous comrades to want to still associate with them, even though the industry isn't a fan of this idea. One potential example of this we can look at is (G)I-DLE and their ex-member Soojin, who left the group back in August 2021 due to school bullying accusations, which again is something Korea takes very seriously. Although we do not have 100% solid proof of this, fans do have their suspicions that some of the group's members, especially Shuhwa, are still close friends with Soojin, and that (G)I-DLE have even potentially attempted to reference Soojin in a few of their music videos since her departure. The most most likely potential example that comes to us is from their nude music video, which I did a full analysis on if you'd like to check it out. However, I did not include this fact we're about to touch upon because it wasn't confirmed or proven in any way. The video centers very heavily around Marilyn Monroe, who is renowned for her beauty and influence in Hollywood, but was very often misunderstood and objectified. The music video features what seems to be a cartoon depiction of Marilyn Monroe herself, but fans also theorized that this cartoon could potentially have purposely been designed to look like Soojin too, who had a similar mole on her face. Again, we do not know for certain if this was their intention, but considering the song partially speaks about how women are stereotyped and disrespected in the industry, and there does seem to be a belief now that the accusations made about Soojin were not anything like first thought, the idea that her ex-group members might still want to pay homage to her in a song, challenging the listener to change their perceptions of women, would make sense. And thirdly, some fans may condone idols communicating with ex-group members because there is an expectation on idols to remain respectful, professional, and to set a good example. I'm sorry to bring us back round to the example of Bobby and B.I, but it was the inspiration for today's video, so I do have more to say on them. I do feel for idols in Bobby's situation in a way because he is stuck in a difficult position here. Somebody he considered a close friend has had to leave the group, so some fans will want him to stay well away from him for the sake of the group's image. But at the same time, idols are also expected to remain professional and respectful at all times, and to set a good example for fans. And sometimes the only way you can set that good example is perhaps by being the bigger person and speaking positively of someone who might have done something wrong. Last year, Bobby responded to fans on social media who seemed to have expressed their concerns towards the iKON members still having any sort of association with B.I by saying that they can acknowledge what he did as wrong, and yes, it was a bad influence on fans, but he does still love and care for him. Bobby asked fans to give B.I another chance to make it up to them and asked them for forgiveness. There will of course always be people who are mad at B.I for what he did and refuse to hear him out, but I think Bobby does hit the nail on the head with what he said. B.I could apologize 1,000 times, but it won't make a difference if there are people who still choose to be mad at him forever and won't allow him the chance to prove that all he did was make a mistake. And having a message of support for him or somebody resonating with fans by saying, I understand you're hurting because we were hurting too, but we have to move on, this could have a great impact. With this coming from one of their ex-group members of all people who went through the hurt of them leaving the group and the controversy, regardless of whether or not they're still friends, this could really help them get their lives and career back on track. And it sets a good example for fans of how you can accept somebody's apology and be able to offer them forgiveness and a second chance. K-pop idols are expected to be these positive examples and role models for fans, and this is one way this could potentially be done even during difficult times. Okay, now let's flip the other side of the coin and look at the other side of the argument, aka reasons why some people might say no, idols should not be associating with their ex-group members. First of all, people might think this is necessary in order to protect the group's image and avoid negative connotations. I think this is the one you all probably expected to hear. Like we already touched upon earlier, a lot of the time when idols leave their groups during controversy is to protect the rest of their group and avoid causing any potential harm to the group's name and perceived image. Because unfortunately in K-pop, mud sticks, and any negative connotations will follow the group around forever and could harm not just their reputation, but opportunities for future growth. Therefore, if an idol has made the decision to leave their group for this reason, it is understandable that some people would expect the group to sort of return the favor and sever any ties with them. It's sort of like going through a breakup in a way, where the only way all parties involved can move on is by cutting ties with each other and no longer associating with one another. Unfortunately, the K-pop industry can be very unforgiving, and if there are negative connotations with one individual, we all know this can, will, and has had an impact on the rest of their group, even though the actions of one should never change the view of many. One example I can think of is Monsta X with their ex-member Wonho. Wonho made the difficult decision to leave Monsta X when he was wrapped up in controversies in order to protect the group and their reputation. However, the members did still hang around with him for some time, assumingly because they were still friends, but I believe there were unfortunately some fans who were not happy about this at all, deciding to take their frustrations out on the members for their choice to keep in contact with him. Another potential reason why some fans might be adverse to idols keeping in contact with their ex-group members is because this would allow fans to see the severity of the situation at hand. I'm going to completely challenge Bobby's comments about forgiveness, just because that's the whole part of a debate, and this is the idea that some actions do not warrant forgiveness. Of course, Bobby was asking people to grant forgiveness weakness in the situation of BI, and I'm not talking about what BI did here, but there have absolutely been some examples in the past of poor actions from a K-pop idol that I would not expect anybody to forgive, because I don't think I would be able to myself. We're talking about some of the more severe crimes. I'm sure I don't have to say anything, but we'll all probably be thinking of some similar examples. So if an idol is wrapped up in an extreme controversy and resultantly leaves their group, if their ex-group members want nothing to do with them either, then this would further emphasize the extremity of what they did for one, but also make it very clear to their listeners that they do not condone these actions. In a way, it will help them reclaim their image and clear the whole group's name by enforcing the idea amongst fans that they do not at all want to associate with somebody who did something so bad. One example we could briefly touch upon that is kind of related to this, of a group severing all ties with an ex-member, is Stray Kids. Following Woojin's departure from the group's leader Bang Chan seemingly touched upon the topic of Woojin in a live, implying heavily that Woojin had done something to betray the group. Since this, none of the group's members have even spoken about Woojin, and they even re-recorded some of their older songs that used to feature him, now without him. Therefore, although we will potentially never know for certain what exactly Woojin did and the extent of the problems, the fact that the members have chose to cut all ties with him, that alone can tell us as much as we need to know as the fans of the group that they do not want to be associated with him. Therefore, in situations like this, cutting any ties can come in very handy. And last but not least, one more reason why fans might not want idols to associate with their ex-group members is to avoid any difficulties with getting into trouble at their label. It is usually expected that an idol will not remain in contact with any ex-members by the general public, so Lord only knows what expectations are put on idols by their labels in situations like this, but we can only assume that they'd be even more severe in considering this as some sort of rule break. An idol choosing to maintain contact with an ex-member who has had to leave due to controversy could be perceived by their management as them purposely going against the wishes of the company, and it makes them look bad, or like the company are the ones being unreasonable in this situation, if their ex-group members still want contact with the departed member. Therefore, this could be seen as a breach of contractual obligations, or potentially even company policies. If this is something their label is very against, it could lead to the remaining group members potentially getting into trouble and even receiving disciplinary actions or repercussions if their label sees it fitting. By adhering to the guidelines set forth by their label and management, idols can demonstrate that they have respect for the expectations put on them as professionals, and they might have no choice but to do this to show that they have respect for the labels. Okay, before we wrap up, I will share my thoughts on this topic before asking you for yours. I think that's only fair. This is a difficult one, to be honest, because I personally think it would depend on the severity of the controversy which the departed member was involved in, and the reaction of their group members. It is of course likely that we as fans will never know the full story when some members have to leave their groups, so I think all we can do is trust the members who are still there to make the right decision and do what they think is right for them, and I do feel like they should have the freedom to do so. While I understand the idea that the industry has of idols breaking ties with ex-members for the sake of the group, it is important to consider the amount of idols who had to leave their groups prematurely for the sake of the group's image, when really there is a perfectly plausible explanation for their controversy which does eventually come to light. In situations like that, it is already unfortunate enough that these idols no longer get to be part of the groups they worked so hard to be a member of, without also them forcing them to lose their friends and colleagues, making them act as though they never existed. I think we can usually learn more about the situation from the months and even years following, and how the ex-member proceeds with the remaining members, than we learn in the moment of the original controversy, where everybody assumes they're in the wrong and we don't get to hear their side of the story. And now time for my favourite part. The floor is yours. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic down in the comments. Do you think this is a black and white simple topic and there's a simple yes or no answer? Or are you more with me in thinking it could be a little more complex in some scenarios depending on what actually happened? And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching if you got this far. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be the first to hear whenever I upload. And I will see you next time. Bye guys!